The gates of the Whitmore estate opened slowly, as if the house itself debated whether anyone deserved to cross its threshold. The driveway wound between manicured hedges and white marble statues that stared with expressionless faces. It was the kind of place that had everything money could buy, except warmth. Evelyn stood at the base of the steps with her hands resting lightly on the strap of a modest handbag. Her clothes were simple but carefully pressed. She looked like someone who knew how to move without taking up space, someone who had learned long ago that silence was often safer than being seen. The front door opened. A tall woman stepped out, her posture as sharp as the diamonds at her ears. Her eyes were cold, calculating, as if she were evaluating a piece of furniture she hadn't ordered. "So, you're Evelyn." "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for—" "This is not an opportunity," the woman cut in. "This is employment. You clean when you're told, and you watch my son when instructed. You do not involve yourself in family matters, and you do not get attached. Understood?" Evelyn nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." The woman turned inside without waiting to see if she followed. Her name was Margaret Whitmore. She walked like the ground obeyed her. The house was immaculate. Too immaculate. No stray toys, no forgotten cup, no sign of laughter. Everything gleamed and echoed. Margaret led her upstairs, stopped at a door, and opened it. Inside sat a boy, perhaps 9, with headphones covering. His ears and a tablet held inches from his face. He didn't look up. "Noah," Margaret said. "This is Evelyn. She will assist with the house and with you. Say hello." Noah did not move. Margaret's jaw flexed. She left. The silence in the room was thick. Evelyn approached slowly, not intruding, just present. "Hello, Noah." No reaction. She did not repeat herself. Instead, she began tidying the room, picking blocks off the floor, stacking books. Not to earn praise, just to bring gentle order. Block rolled near her foot. She looked up. Noah's eyes met hers, not with curiosity, but with challenge. He picked up another block and threw it harder. It hit her arm. Evelyn did not flinch. She picked up the block and placed it back in its bin. Noah stared, waiting for reaction, waiting for shouting, scolding, anger, anything predictable. Instead, Evelyn simply returned to cleaning. "No one talks to me," Noah said quietly. Evelyn did not look up. "I'm talking to you." He didn't know what to do with that. The next morning, a tutor barked orders at Noah during breakfast, voice tense and clipped. Noah slouched deeper in defiance. The tutor grew angrier. Evelyn pulled out a chair beside her. "Noah, you can sit with me if you'd like." Noah hesitated, then moved. The tutor looked offended. "He needs discipline," the tutor snapped. "He needs understanding," Evelyn replied softly. The tutor left. Noah watched her, confused. "Why didn't you yell?" he asked. "Yelling doesn't teach," she said. Noah looked at his hands. Small. Fragile in a way he didn't want the world to notice. "I don't know how to be different. You're learning," she said. Small changes began then. Quiet ones. Noah watched the way Evelyn interacted with the staff, the way she listened before she spoke, the way she treated everyone the same, regardless of status or role. One afternoon, Evelyn found Noah sitting on his bedroom floor, not crying, but folded into himself. She sat beside him without speaking. "They don't see me," he whispered. "Some people only know how to see themselves," she said. He nodded barely. "Can you teach me?" he asked. "I can," she said. Lessons began without announcements. She taught him how to say thank you by modeling it. She taught him how to look someone in the eyes by offering hers without pressure. She taught him how to breathe when overwhelmed by breathing with him. The staff noticed. The house noticed. Even the walls felt different. One afternoon, Noah pointed to the piano room. "Do you play?" he asked. Evelyn's breath caught just slightly, but Noah noticed. "I used to," she said. "Why did you stop?" "Life asked me to." He sat at the bench and placed his fingers on the keys. "Will you teach me?" Evelyn sat beside him. She did not touch his hands. She guided instead through patience. He tried. Notes uneven, but real. "I don't want to be like my mother," he said quietly. You're not, Evelyn replied. And for the first time, Noah smiled. Not because he was told not to perform, but because something inside him softened. The change did not happen loudly. It moved through the house like a shift in light. Noah began to say thank you to the staff. He held the door for the gardener. He asked questions instead of turning away. The silence that had once felt heavy now had space inside it. Margaret did not notice at first. She had grown used to seeing her son as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be known. But one afternoon, she came home early and heard music. Soft, uneven, searching. She followed the sound and found Noah at the piano, Evelyn beside him. Their shoulders almost touched, but not quite. A shared quiet. What is happening? Margaret asked. Her voice was sharp enough to cut the air. Noah's hands froze on the keys. Evelyn rose slowly. He asked me to teach him, she said. Margaret's eyes narrowed. My son does not waste time with hobbies. He has goals, tutors, standards. You are here to assist, not to interfere. Noah stood. There was no rebellion on his face, only hurt. I like playing, he said softly. Margaret turned her attention to him with disbelief. You don't know what you like. You are a child. Noah did not argue. He simply stepped back. Evelyn spoke quietly. He's learning to express himself. It's healthy. Margaret's voice hardened. You are not here to shape him. You are here to follow instructions. Noah watched them both, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. Evelyn did not raise her voice. Everyone deserves to be seen. Margaret stared at her, expression unreadable. Leave, she said. Now. Evelyn nodded. She walked toward the door. She did not rush. She did not apologize for existing. She carried herself the same way she always had, with quiet dignity. As she left the room, Noah spoke, his voice cracking. Why are you like this? The question stopped Margaret in her tracks. She turned slowly. Not angry now, just startled. What did you say? Noah swallowed. You don't see people. You just tell them what to be. And then you get angry when they can't breathe. For a moment, Margaret didn't speak. Not because she was offended, but because the words struck something deep and long buried. That night, even the house seemed unsure of itself. Every room felt as if it was waiting. Noah sat at the kitchen table, untouched food in front of him. He did not cry. He did not speak. He stared forward, as if the world had folded inward. Evelyn washed dishes, her movements calm. She did not try to fill the silence. After a while, Noah spoke. Are you going to leave? Evelyn kept her eyes on the glass she was drying. Do you want me to leave? Noah shook his head slowly. No, I think everyone leaves. Evelyn set the glass down. She sat beside him. I'm here now, she said. He looked at her. Really looked. His eyes were the eyes of someone much older than 9. Someone who had been disappointed by the world more times than he could count. How do I be different? He whispered. Evelyn spoke gently. You practice kindness, patience, presence. And when it feels hard, that means you're doing it right. He nodded. The kind of nod that came from somewhere deeper than understanding. A nod of choosing. The next morning, Noah helped pick up a tray a maid dropped. The maid nearly cried. The staff watched him differently after that, as if he had cracked open his own shell and something warm was finally visible beneath it. But kindness changes more than the person who learns it. It changes the people who witness it, and some people do not know how to handle that. Margaret watched all of it with growing discomfort. Not anger exactly. Something closer to fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of recognition. Fear of herself. One morning, she entered the kitchen and found Noah handing a plate to a housemaid. Not ordering, not demanding, just offering. Thank you, he told her. Real words. Real tone. Margaret froze. Something inside her recoiled. What are you doing? She asked. The maid stepped back. Noah looked up. Helping, he said. Margaret turned to Evelyn, who had just entered the room. You are changing him, she said. Her voice was thin, stretched tight over something internal and fragile. I don't like it. Evelyn met her eyes. No challenge, no fear. He's becoming who he is. Margaret's expression tightened. "Pack your things," she said. "You're finished here." Noah's breath shook. "You can't," he said. Margaret didn't look at him. "I said, she's done." Noah turned to Evelyn. "Please don't go." Evelyn knelt in front of him. "You remember what I taught you?" His lip trembled. "To be kind." She nodded. "Even when it's hard." Noah swallowed, and Evelyn left the house. It was the quietest breaking in the world. The house did not feel the same after Evelyn left. It wasn't just quiet. It was hollow, as if every room had been holding its breath for weeks and finally exhaled into emptiness. Noah stopped speaking. Not out of defiance. Out of collapse. His eyes no longer searched for connection. His hands no longer reached for the piano. He sat in silence during meals, stared past tutors, walked the halls like someone moving through fog. Margaret tried to return the house to its old rhythm, but rhythm requires life, and life had slipped out the door with Evelyn. At dinner, a tutor attempted conversation. Noah didn't respond. A lecture followed. Noah remained silent. Margaret watched her son and felt something unfamiliar flicker in her chest. Not irritation, not disappointment, something closer to fear. Late that night, she found him sitting on the floor of his room, knees drawn to his chest, forehead resting against his arms. The same posture Evelyn had found him in the first time, but this time it felt heavier. She sat beside him, leaving space between them. He didn't look up. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. He didn't respond. "When I was your age, I was sent away. I learned to work, to impress, to perform. I learned that softness was dangerous, that needing someone was humiliating. I thought strength meant never breaking." Her voice trembled, just barely. "I didn't know how to love without fear," she whispered. Noah lifted his head a little. His eyes were tired. "I just wanted you to see me," he said. Margaret inhaled sharply. Not dramatic, just real. The kind of breath someone takes when something inside them cracks. "I see you," she said. But he looked away. "Too late," he whispered. Something inside Margaret collapsed. Not loudly, quietly. Like a window closing in a room no one realized had been open. The next morning, Margaret left the house. No chauffeur, no schedule, no assistant. She drove herself across town to a small neighborhood Evelyn had listed as her residence, not the temporary housing for house staff, the real address. She knocked. Evelyn opened the door slowly, as though she had known this moment would come. Margaret entered. She did not stand taller than the room. She did not lead. She did not control. She sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Margaret asked, "Why did you care so much for him?" Evelyn's eyes softened, not with pity, but memory. "I had a son," she said. The words were steady, but they held the weight of storms. "He was gentle, quiet, sensitive in a world that rewards sharp edges. I tried to teach him kindness, but kindness is heavy to carry alone." She looked down at her hands. "He died when he was young, too young." The air in the room shifted. Not heavier, but realer. "When I met Noah," Evelyn continued, "I recognized the silence. The loneliness that doesn't cry. The kind that sits inside the chest and grows roots." Her eyes lifted to meet Margaret's. "I didn't care for him because it was my job. I cared because he needed someone who could see him." Margaret didn't look away. "It was me," she said, voice breaking. "I made him feel alone." "No," Evelyn replied softly. "Loneliness doesn't start with blame. It starts with pain that has nowhere to go." Margaret closed her eyes. Tears didn't fall, but something inside her finally unlocked. She stood slowly. "Come back," she said. "Not as staff, not as service. Just come back, please." Evelyn looked toward the doorway, toward memory, toward the boy she had taught to breathe again. She nodded, and they left together. The front doors of the Whitmore house opened, but this time there was no formality, no tension, no ritual of control. Margaret entered first, quiet, almost unsure of her own footsteps. Evelyn followed, not as a servant returning to duty, but as someone who had been asked to return, to be present, to matter. Noah stood at the top of the staircase. He didn't rush forward. He didn't speak. He simply looked at her, and his face said everything. He looked older than a child should ever have to be, and yet in that moment, he looked small again. Not weak, just honest. Evelyn walked toward him, slow, gentle. He came down the stairs one step at a time, as if each step was making sure the world was real. When he reached her, he didn't throw himself into her arms. He placed his forehead against her shoulder and breathed in. Not to cry, not to hold on, but to return. "I knew you'd come back," he whispered. "I told you," she said softly. "I don't leave people who need to be seen." Margaret stood behind them, watching, feeling every piece of her former world loosen and fall away. She realized that what Evelyn restored was not her son. It was the space inside him where love could live. The house began to feel different in ways almost impossible to explain. Nothing changed in the furniture or the walls, but the air had weight now, warmth. Rooms were filled by presence instead of silence. Meals were eaten at the same table. Words were spoken without caution. People looked at one another and saw, not roles, but faces. Noah began to smile without shrinking first. He stood straighter, not because he was forced, but because he finally had something to stand for. Tutors noticed his concentration had changed. Staff noticed his eyes were no longer guarded. He said, "Thank you often." Not out of politeness, but gratitude. Margaret watched him change, but she was changing too. One evening, she stood in the doorway of the piano room while Evelyn and Noah sat at the bench together. No lessons. Just sound. Soft, uneven, full of the kind of emotion that does not need to be explained. Margaret stepped closer. Not as authority, not as supervisor, as someone trying to arrive. "May I sit with you?" she asked. Noah turned to look at her. He didn't rush. He didn't question. He looked at her the same way Evelyn once looked at him, quietly deciding if the moment was safe. He nodded. Margaret sat beside them. She didn't touch the keys. She didn't speak. She simply listened. Evelyn played lightly, as though the music was memory being held gently in her hands. Noah watched her fingers, not to mimic them, but to understand how sound came from emotion. Margaret's breathing softened. Her shoulders lowered. She didn't realize she'd been holding herself like armor for years. The room felt full, but full in the way hearts fill, not spaces. They stayed like that for a long time. No instruction, no performance. Just three people who had finally stopped running from the tenderness they needed. Together, they were no longer a wealthy mother, a troubled child, and a hired caretaker. They were something else. Something chosen. Not assigned. Something built. Not inherited. They were a home. The days that followed were quiet in a different way. Not empty. Not heavy. Just gentle. The house felt like it finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. The kind of peace that comes when people stop trying to win and start trying to understand. Noah began playing the piano more often. Not to impress, not to perform, just to feel. Sometimes the notes stumbled, sometimes they flowed, but they were always sincere. Evelyn sat nearby, never instructing too much, only guiding when he searched for something he didn't yet have words for. Margaret would sit in the doorway sometimes, listening. She didn't always join, didn't always know how to enter the moment, but she was learning, and learning was enough. One afternoon, the light filtered through the tall windows in warm gold, the kind of light that makes everything look softer. Evelyn sat at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. She didn't play. She just sat, breathing, remembering. Noah approached quietly and sat beside her. He didn't speak for a while. He didn't have to. "Do you miss him?" Noah asked softly. Evelyn closed her eyes. "Every day," she said. "But missing someone means they mattered, and I am grateful he mattered." Noah leaned his head gently against her shoulder, not looking at her, just being with her. "I'm glad you came here," he whispered. Evelyn placed her hand over his, warm and steady. So am I. Margaret entered the room. Slowly, almost unsure if she was allowed to step into something so soft. She walked toward them and then stopped, as if afraid she would disturb the moment. Noah reached his free hand out toward her. It was a small gesture, a simple one. But simple things are sometimes the ones that heal the deepest places. Margaret sat on his other side. No speeches, no apologies, just presence. They sat like that, 3 figures framed in golden light. No one bigger, no one smaller, no one above, no one beneath, just together. Noah looked at Evelyn, his voice steady, not childish, not forced. You don't work for us, he said. Evelyn looked at him with eyes that held both loss and love, both what she had carried and what she had found. You're part of us, he said. The words settled into the room like warmth settling into the bones of a house that had been cold too long. Evelyn did not cry. She didn't need to. Some emotions don't move through tears. They move through stillness. Margaret placed her hand over both of theirs. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Something that did not need naming. Family is not always blood. Sometimes it is the people who stay. The people who see us. The people who choose us even when we do not know how to choose ourselves. The house did not change on the outside. The walls were the same. The paintings were the same. The piano was the same. But everything inside had transformed. The echoes were softer. The rooms felt lived in. And within that house where silence had once been the loudest sound, there was now something else. A heartbeat.